Hi, Piyush. Thank you for joining in. And firstly, a huge congratulations on your 735 on the GMAT Focus Edition.
Thanks a lot, Taba. It's really a great achievement after a long journey. Finally,
Yes,
I'm at the score,
yes,
so it
yes.
feels wonderful.
Great. So, Piyush, we completely understand that, your journey has been a very incredible journey, right?
Yeah.
You started off with a score closer to around a 400, and at this point, you are at a 735, which is equivalent to a 100th percentile, right? So, I wanted to ask you, what was your first reaction when you saw that score pop up on the screen?
I was in complete disbelief. So I'll narrate the story. What happens in the classic edition, you get the scores printed the moment you submit the test.
Mm-hmm.
In Focus, it doesn't happen. You get a pop up on your screen. Then after 2 days, you get over the mail, the official score. You do not get the printout of your score.
Yeah.
So I was in a shock that I actually read it right or not. Was it really 100? So I did not say to my family also that I got 100 percentile till the time I got that official score over mail.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a very happy moment that was.
Yeah, and I think it was even more, graceful of you to actually write to us and inform that you have achieved this success, because we love our students writing to us and sharing their success stories. So when we look back at your journey, and when you reflect back at your journey, Piyush, so achieving that 100 percentile is a great score, right? It's a magnificent improvement that we are looking at. We're talking about a 300-point improvement. So what do you see as your biggest challenge that you actually overcame?
So the biggest challenge was a mindset challenge. So basically, what I say to my friends is that GMAT for me has been a very spiritual journey because I am a changed person. What used to happen in my life in general also, I used to get easily over the easy problems in my life, but as the problems used to grow harder, I used to give up. Like the
Mhm.
last leg, every time I used to give up in almost all the areas of my life, not just GMAT. So
Mhm.
that is the fundamental shift in my mindset that has happened, that stick with a problem, stick with a situation, do not run away from the situation. So yeah, that has been the biggest takeaway in terms, and that if you in contextualize in terms of GMAT prep, the most important thing becomes that stick with your questions. Do not jump to see the answers of those questions. You know the basics. You have read the basics from your course. Now sit there and try to solve that question, no matter how much time it takes, because that is where the growth happens. If you simply say spend 5 minutes and do not get the answer and you see the solution, you actually do not grow by that much as you would grow if you spend say 20-30 minutes trying to solve that.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is the biggest takeaway for me.
Yeah, and I could have agreed more with you that, mindset, it is at the end of the day a combination of mindset and ability that can get one
Yeah,
success on the GMAT, right?
correct.
And the point that you've spoken about strategic review is something that we also very strongly reinstate, that, you have to spend time to actually understand what you got incorrect. And if you've
Yes,
got something correct, have you got it correct for the right reasons or not? Right.
right,
So,
correct.
Pish, taking a step back, so let's talk about your initial mark, right? You scored around a 430. Now, in verbal, you almost started with 100 or like 11th percentile. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Yes,
And
yes,
at this point, you are standing at a 99th percentile, right?
right.
So, could you elaborate more on how you improved and what were the skills that you actually developed to make this improvement?
So basically, I was that student who has tried giving cat and failed with cat, and then realizing that work ek sab zyada ho gaya. So continuing from my verbal journey, like so where I was at the starting, and then from where I reached. So sentence correction was one thing that actually I struggled with a lot initially. But given that in the focus edition that was completely removed, so that
Mm-hmm.
was kind of a big relief. Moving to CR and RC, what I think as of right now that CR is like the core thing that you actually need to study for verbal,
Mm-hmm.
because it actually develops the way you think. Because
Mm-hmm.
finally, GMAT, it's critical reasoning, like the verbal, it's verbal ability, right? You need, it's not an English exam per se. It's just testing how better are you able to think. So that is where the critical reasoning approach comes in handy. And
Mm-hmm.
as probably in the platform also, you would see my improvement over a period of time for critical reasoning. So that is, and So what I believe that as and it happened for me that as and when I got better in CR, my RC score automatically improved.
Mm-hmm.
So I had not to give too much time on RC, but yeah, CR becomes the key here. And for CR, as we talked about in the start of the video, that it really becomes very important in CR that you treat each and every option, you give its due respect
Yeah.
and solve it in a very systematic manner rather than just thinking something and not actually putting down something on paper and doing it in a lot of depth, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting part is since you mentioned that we could see your progress on the platform, right? I would
Yes.
like to show everyone this score, right? So this is your CR performance. This is a
Yeah.
data of a good about 93 questions, and it's not just the accuracy going up to a 78%. That means in the last 15 questions that you attempted, you were already at a 78%, right? But the good part is that your timing also started going down. That is, the
Right.
timing that you were using per question actually dropped down to less than 2 minutes, right?
Correct.
Now, because you just mentioned that the CR skills that you learned or developed, right, the pre-thinking approach that you developed
Mhm.
also came in handy in the reading comprehension. So,
Right.
what was your approach previously in reading passages, and how
So
did that change?
right. So, where I was mentioning in previously that, so basically I came from CAT background. I was preparing for CAT and was not able to get a very high score there. So I moved to GMAT because like even the work experience part factored in, right? So there I was very weak in RC. But here, what I realized, like after going through a lot of CR passages, I automatically started finding RC very easy. So
Mm-hmm.
probably it was the approach shift or the mindset shift that happened in CR. So basically, what I used to do was when I'm reading a paragraph, I am making sure that I understand the major theme of it. Even if I do not understand one word or one sentence maybe of the four sentence in a paragraph,
Mm-hmm.
if I get the theme of it, I'm like, okay, I'm all right. I'm understanding what is happening here. And that way, I built the entire story that, okay, what is this passage trying to tell me? And then going to options and then eliminating it. One thing that I would say to anyone preparing for GMAT, particularly RC, is that have that sense of curiosity
Mm-hmm.
whenever you're reading a new passage. Because think of it this way that if you solve 100 RC passages, you know about 100 topics that you would not know. Because none of the RC topics are fiction. Everything is like some event that has happened in this world, something related to science, something related to politics. So have that sense of curiosity that really helps.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, and I think the way that you develop these skills, you were able to execute them also as effectively, because
Correct.
your V87 that we talked about is really backed up with a 97th percentile in CR and a 96th percentile in RC. So really
Yes.
commendable job done there, Piyush.
Correct.
Right. So once you were done with your verbal, you moved on to the next section, which is your quant, right?
Mhm.
In quant, you started with a slightly stronger base when compared to verbal, right?
Mhm.
And at this point, you were at a Q87, right?
Mhm.
So,
Right.
what are the key skills that you believe are essential to achieve a 94th percentile on the GMAT quant?
Okay. So one thing that has happened with the focus edition, quant is now very competitive. Like if
Mhm.
you would see, I just got one single question wrong,
Yeah.
but now I'm at 94th percentile. So basically, a lot of people have got all the questions right.
Mm.
So that is now very important. So how you get here? Basically, think of your quant preparation in two stages. The first stage is you should not have any knowledge gap. So go through all the section, subsection, and make sure that knowledge-wise there is no problem. So
Mhm.
for me, uh, I was very traumatized by the chapters of PNC and probability from my JE days. I was never able to understand those chapters. So when they came back in GMAT, I was like, okay, here we go again. Now again, I'll be traumatized. But what I realized that GMAT uh, is quite easy compared to JE. There are limited types of question, and the material also available was very concise and to the point. Okay, this is what you need to understand. This is what you need to understand.
Mhm.
So that way, my first step was to fill in my knowledge gap.
Mhm.
So that should be anyone's first flag that you should not have any knowledge gap. How you can test it is pick any 20 random quant question and see if you get an accuracy of around 80%. If you're able to get that in an untimed environment, So you have your knowledge gaps filled, and then you move on to the practice part where you try to get it in a timed manner. Now, what happens in GMAT that it is very important to read the question very properly. So, say for example, they would say that there are three categories A, B, and C. A is 50% of the whole, B is 25% of A, and C is 10% of B. So, what is C as a total percentage of whole? So, these kind of questions come, and that is where we do slight mistakes, not understanding it is 25% of what. So, these are very basic concepts, so to say. But getting them right one after the another during exam becomes challenging.
Yeah.
So think of quant preparation in two stages. First stage is fill your knowledge gap, and in the second stage, do your questions in a timed environment where you avoid doing these silly mistakes.
Yeah.
So a hack that I used for myself on the writing pad on the exam day, I wrote in big block letters, read every word, and put it in front of my computer screen. So before reading every question, I could see, okay, read every word, then I go to questions. So I'm being reminded of that, that don't miss any word.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's very well put, Piyush, the stage one, stage two approach, where stage one
Correct.
focus on learning the concepts and the processes, right? The
Correct.
questions you would be able to score better once the gaps are bridged.
Yes.
Otherwise, you might just end up solving a lot of questions, but you might not see that improvement that you're really desiring,
Correct.
right? For you, I think that structured approach that you followed, that learn the concepts, processes, do focus, practice, and time setup, really set it
Right.
apart. Because, like you said, you just had one mistake in the entire quant section. Even your timing was very well managed, which landed you at a Q87, right?
Correct.
So now the verbal is done, the quant is done, right? We get into the DI section.
Correct.
So coming from a GMAT Classic background, because you have earlier given GMAT Classic edition where you scored a 710 once and a 720 the second time around, right?
Right.
So what was your perception about the DI section?
Okay. So starting with what I understood when I first time saw the syllabus of DI. So what I understood was that okay, it is mota moti DI, whatever it was in DI, now it's in here, but now it's a complete independent section of its own. Then for the first time when I tried giving a mock in which DI was there, I ran short of time like anything. Like I was here and there, like there was no structured approach. I just fell. Like it was, I think I got 8 or 9 questions out of those 20 questions. So like the first mock was very horrible. Then I did like broke it down into multiple pieces and try to see what I'm getting wrong. So what I realized one thing was data sufficiency is something that is asked a lot. I think even in my attempt, 7 to 8 questions were data sufficiency of the 20 questions. So I went back to my basics because data sufficiency is where you need to have very strong concepts.
Yeah.
You do not need to calculate anything. You just need to say that these inputs are sufficient to get the output. So you need to be very strong in terms of what process is there so that you could say, okay, this input is enough or not. So that is one thing you need to really work hard. Like of the 4 questions I got wrong, 3 were data sufficiency. So if there was scope of even more improvement, but then again, now there's no point.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I'm trying to say that data sufficiency becomes one very critical area where you need to focus on. The quant becomes a bit easier because data sufficiency is not in quant section, but then again, it is here. So you need to keep your focus on the basics of quant questions. Uh, because the data sufficiency is basically quants, right? I think only few verbal type data sufficiency question I have
Yes.
seen till now,
Yes.
but mostly it's quant. So that is there. The second thing is multi-source reasoning. That is where people struggle a lot. So a few things helped me here. So there was this a mindset shift. So again, coming back to the basic, the first step should be that if there is no time pressure, can you solve all the questions? So what I did for myself, I took another DI mock, and what I did, I paused the test. So basically, take a question, take a screenshot of that question, pause the test, solve that question, and then go to another question like this. So what I realized that if there is no time pressure, I'm not getting questions wrong. So more or less, I'm aware what is happening. And so being an engineer, we do that on a daily basis that I have to make sense out of data that comes to me and I need to make my engineering design. So it is what I do for my job. So it was familiar what I'm supposed to do, seeing graphs, interpreting them. Uh, but if you are not come from if you do not come from that background, then you should, I think, go about solving, say, 30 to 40 graphical interpretation question to understand what is happening, what is being asked, and be familiar with that. So again, first step being that can you solve with 80% accuracy if there is no time limit? And then the next step where you need to manage DI with time pressure. So what I realized for myself was that I was never able to reach till the 20th question of the 5 or 6 marks that I gave. So I bound myself to 18 questions. That Piyush, okay, I'm targeting to get the first 18 questions right. Last 2 questions will just simply mark. A very important lesson is do not leave any question on GMAT. That is much more penalizing than getting a question wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
So now coming to MSR. So with this background set, in MSR, what I did was, so I was pretty confident that if there was no time limitation, I will get this question right. So I removed that time foundation from my head, thinking that I'll go only till the 18th question, basically 6 questions every 15 minutes. And secondly, there's this webinar of Payal ma'am where she emphasizes on the point that own the data set. Do not go back. Do not keep on going back on the data. Do not skim through. So here the importance of mocks come in. When I was giving mock, I realized what I do in MSR generally is that I skim through the data. I'm just looking, okay, this is given, okay, move to the next tab, and then see the question, and now I'm lost again. Where to go back, what to see. So this is one mistake that I corrected in myself. For the first 2 tabs, like in a very attentive manner, I used to take notes, like not the copying the entire thing, but just taking what is important and put it on my writing pad. And when the third tab is open in front of me, so I have all the data in front of my eyes. 2 tabs in a paper and 1 tab on the screen. So that way, when I'm solving the question, I'm not getting distracted between the tabs. So this is one thing that actually helped me a lot. So if you would see in my attempt that the first question of MSR, I took 6.5 minutes. But the subsequent 2 questions, the last question I was able to solve within a minute. So investing the time there helped to get the question right in a very smooth manner. So again, summarizing, first step is to be that confident. If there is no time limit, you can solve. Second step is solving with time pressure.
Yeah. And I think you really conquered, your troubles with DI really well, because at the end, you were able to score a 99th percentile, right? So that's a great ending to it. So when you finished all your preparation, when we talk about sectional levels, right? You've taken your verbal, you're done with your quants, you're done with your DI. So you have an understanding that you're prepared. So that's when the test readiness and the mock phase come into picture.
Correct.
Right. So what were your major test taking strategies or mock strategies that you maintained throughout the final phase of your prep?
Okay. So the first question that everyone needs to answer for themselves is, in what order will you be taking the GMAT exam? Like these 3 sections, in what order will you be taking? So P section and so PNC, basics of PNC, there are 6 possible combinations and you need to choose one. So even on the last day when I was driving to the exam center, I was talking to one of my friend about in which order should I attempt. I was confused till that point of time. But what I have realized as a thumb rule that is very important is do DI after quant. Whatever method you choose of attempting, do DI after quant. DI and quant should be done in a continuous setting. It is very important because once you do quant, it's basically like your vehicle is starting, you're getting warmed up with all those calculations, all those nitty-gritties. And then when you come to DI after that, so you are already have the speed, you already have the momentum. That is actually very important to conquer DI. So that is one thing that I have realized and that I'll propagate to anyone listening to this, that always do DI after quant and in a single sitting. The 10 minutes break, use that for verbal. So basically, if you're very confident about verbal, then you can do verbal first, take a 10-minute break, then quant TI, or quant TI 10 minutes break, and then verbal. I did the latter one. Quant TI, 10 minutes break, and then verbal. So this is a self-exploration. Everyone needs to find where they are best. But this is what worked for me. Even in the classic edition, I used to do quant and then verbal. Because what I realized for myself was the only mistake in quant I was doing were silly mistakes, and I do silly mistakes when I'm tired. So that is something that I know about myself from giving multiple mocks. So I did not be tired. So that was the reason I was able to get Q50 in both of the attempts. Again, maybe I did one or two questions wrong that stole me of the 51. But then that helped me. So I stick with that in my focus edition also, where I am giving first quant, then DI, 10 minutes break, and then verbal.
Okay, so it's important for everyone to understand that you decided on the sequence because quant was something that was strong for you and that was comfortable for you.
Correct.
Right. So what you're trying to say is that if you're deciding your sequence, it's always beneficial to start with your stronger section.
No, it was strong, but my decision point was if I do a mistake in quant, why am I doing that mistake in quant? So my insight was if I'm tired, if I'm mentally fatigued, I'll do very simple questions wrong. So to save myself from that, I did quant first.
Okay. Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, talking about your test day experience, Piyush, right? Because, you have done with your mocks, you are finally on the test day, right? So why don't you walk us through your test day experience?
Okay. So test day wise, two things that I did this test day that actually made the difference. And uh, I think, see, I think skill wise, I was there at say 96, 97%. I was getting that score in mocks on a continuous basis, like 3 to 4 mocks. I got that 695 score. But what actually differentiates the 735 from that 695 is few additional things that I did on the test day. One was writing on a piece of paper, read every word, and put that in front of my screen. So that I think the silly mistakes were very few, hardly any silly mistakes. Maybe like that one question in quant or few data sufficiency question. Maybe I got that wrong. But that is one thing that I did for having that peak concentration. The second thing was try to meditate. It may sounds a bit cliche, but how I practically did it was whenever a thought used to come to my mind on that day, right from the moment I woke up, I was like, यार पीयूष इसके बारे में ना बाद में सोचेंगे. I just kept on telling myself पीयूष इसके बारे में बाद में सोचेंगे. Like even the last RC that came on my test was very hard because generally uh, I was able to make sense what the main idea of the passage is at least by the first reading itself. The passage was something on the line that okay, this is there, but this is also not there. There's another hypothesis, but it is also not there. So I was very confused, and then I started thinking at that point of time that okay, maybe we have not read RC properly, so we should go back to our home and reread RC and re-practice it. And then I caught myself, okay, Piyush, theek hai, good thoughts. We'll think about it 10 minutes later. Just 10 minutes are left in the exam. Let's not spend that thinking right now. So that is one very practical thing that I did on my exam day, and I would suggest everyone to figure out your own version where you are able to control your mind from chattering and focusing on things other than the question in front of you. So that becomes very important.
Yeah.
One thing in DI that I missed in terms of test taking strategy is remember that you have a calculator in DI. So it is like a two-sided knife because what happens if on an easy question you open the calculator, you are wasting time, and if on a hard question you're not opening calculator, again you are wasting time. So while you're giving your mocks, you need to figure out that for yourself in which questions you need to open the calculator and develop that skill within yourself, develop that intuition. So that is one thing that actually also helped me in DI. Like in questions like I know that I am bad at calculating 21 by 81 or say 21 by 79 and comparing it with 20 by 80. I know people can calculate it, but I know I am weak at it. I'm not very confident. So I would simply put that in calculator and see. So that is
Fair
one
enough.
thing that
Yeah.
you need to understand about yourself and see how it helps.
Yeah. And I think it worked out well for you in your
Correct.
case. So now, Piyush, since you are on the other side, right, you've given the test, it's a success, you've achieved your target score. So what would be those key takeaways that you would like to share with other GMAT aspirants?
The biggest takeaway is momentum. GMAT ultimately comes down to momentum. Say, block your next 3 months, next 100 days for GMAT if you are starting today. block in the sense that I know we all are working professionals, things come up. But even if there's a hectic day, you have worked for 12 hours, just solve at least one question
Mhm.
so that you are in touch with the material. That is of paramount importance. Otherwise, what will happen? You'll be restarting from beginning, which wastes a lot of time effectively, right? So that is my biggest takeaway from this journey is that uh, block your 3 months, block your 100 days, and just focus on GMAT, nothing else. And obviously job, and then GMAT. So that is the biggest learning. Second, one big learning is sticking with one thing till the end. As Rajat was telling that if you complete something only 80%, you'll get only 60% of the result. But if you complete it 100%, you'll get 100% of the return.
Yeah.
So stick with it. Say, for example, if you are a e-GMAT student, you should ask your doubts via mail and get it cleared. Write multiple mails, right? Like there's no limitation to that. Till the
Yeah.
time it's not clear why a particular question, why this option is right or why this option is wrong. Till the time it's not clear, you should keep on writing and rewriting those mails. So sticking with one thing, going all in with that. So yeah, these are the two major takeaways for
Yeah.
anyone.
I think you summarized it really well. And these are key takeaways that can, help a lot of students out there, especially the momentum part. I think consistency is the key. It's a
Yes,
very crucial role, right? Because
correct,
sometimes, when you lose that momentum, going that back and forth takes a lot of your time and your efforts also. So that
right,
momentum needs to be there, and seeking help. And that's what
correct.
we are here for, right? If you
Yes,
are in trouble, it's always better to seek out help so that you do not lose out on the precious time that you have and it works out for you, right?
correct.
So
Last thing, last thing.
yes,
There
yes,
is no
please.
magical formula. There is no magic out there. There is no magical formula. Don't go out in the market looking for some magical formula. There exists none. I have seen that, been there. There is no magical formula. Stick with your basics. Do what you are told. Do it through. That
Yeah.
is like the last learning, maybe.
Yes, I think on that note, I think that's the beautiful ending that we have here, that there is no magical formula. You have
Correct,
to do the things the right way to get to your target score. If
correct,
it's the hard way, there's no other way to do this. You have to put in the
correct.
efforts to do that, right?
Yeah,
So on that note, Piyush, I would really like to thank you on behalf of the entire e-GMAT team for taking out the time today and sharing your insights. I think it was lovely interacting with you. We wish you all the best for your next steps, and we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for an email soon regarding your
yeah,
admits also. Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.